Sekeres Price for Wednesday, May 22nd, 2024. We're coming to you from the Nation Network studio built by Arbor Lee here at the iconic Wall Center in downtown Vancouver. And if you're planning a boardroom meeting or even a gala, the Wall Center offers 30 unique event rooms. Contact them to learn more. Sales at wallcenter.com. I know this has been a popular spot for grads over the years. Did you do your grad here?
No.
I know it was so very long ago, it's hard to remember.
It was at the where the hell was my grad? No,
it must have been a good grad.
It was Plaza of Nations when that used to be a thing. It was great.
Oh,
yeah.
I was going to say, did he even graduate?
Hey, we may have had a scoop here. Somebody tell UBC.
Yeah, Plaza of Nations.
What about you, Grady? Where was your grad here?
Convention Center High School. But I went to school out east for post-secondary.
Right. Well, I meant high school.
Yeah, there's no grad event for university.
Convocation?
Yeah,
that's on.
Of course there is.
It's on campus.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about walking across the stage and getting your diploma. I'm talking about the party, man. Poll question today. Asking you, was a rivalry born between, of course, the Vancouver Canucks and the Edmonton Oilers? You can vote yes or no. Do so at Sekeres Price, Twitter, now X, YouTube. I voted yes. I voted yes for a number of reasons. You had the Canucks with the season series sweep. You had the Oilers in 7 games in the playoff series. You had some distaste built up between both clubs and their fan bases. So I voted yes, and I look forward to it continuing next year in the regular season, and who knows? Perhaps these teams meet in the playoffs yet again.
You see, when a little sperm touches the egg,
you would know something about that.
Contraception occurs.
4 children.
Nothing is born at that point, but contraception. That's what we just saw. Conception there.
Mm-hmm.
It was conceived of, the rivalry. Not born yet. They face each other next year.
Boy, this is sounding like an abortion.
I say contraception.
This is almost sounding like an abortion argument here.
No, it's
18 weeks, 21 weeks.
I said contraception. Conception. There we go.
Yeah, contraception is the
preventative.
Contraception is what you could have done.
My metaphor got off to
but chose not to.
My metaphor got off to the start
until you got to 4.
If they face each other next year, yes, it's fully born. But
you're not there yet.
I think it's got all the hallmarks, the makings of it. But I think they need one more chapter.
Grady, break the tie.
Not quite yet.
You guys are such
It's
party
almost
poopers.
there.
You're such.
I think they need another playoff series and a little more on ice bad blood, perhaps.
I'll use another CON word, contrived. You can't just make it so because you want it to be, Matt.
It's not that I want it to be, Blake. It's they played 11 games this year, and there were quite extensive storylines in those 11 meetings.
Canucks won the best of 11, 7-4. Gets them nothing.
Canucks Jet on Twitter. 1 series is a fluke, 2 is a trend, 3 is a rivalry.
Okay.
3. Wow. High bar. Well, we'll see. It's crazy that it took so long for them to face each other again.
Yeah, to say the
crazy.
least.
But I think with both of them tracking to be good next year, I don't know if the Canucks will be division winning kind of good, but I think they should be a playoff team next year. So there's a really good chance they face each other next season in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you for that analogy, Blake.
Yes, thank you for
Really
sex ed in the opening.
Brought
segment.
home the point.
It wasn't sex ed. No, if that's what sex ed was, that
early
explains a
stage.
lot with Grady.
This is 100 level stuff.
Did they
That's
still?
all I know.
Did they still teach sex ed, or has that been banned?
That's not sex ed, guys. That's biology. It's.
I didn't.
Did you get sex ed in class, Grady, or was it gone by?
I think
that
the
point?
internet kind of took over that.
The internet. Oh boy, that's a good spot to learn about that stuff.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh my god.
All sorts of tutorials.
First of all,
there.
you get a gal to order pizza, and then
What's in the pizza? Not vegetarian.
okay. All right. Settle down here.
Moving right along to our top story, brought to you by Mr. Lube.
Oh,
It's not Bob. It's not
It's right there.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Wrong sponsor, though.
Rick Tocchet, we anticipate, will be awarded the Jack Adams Trophy as the NHL's top coach later today.
Our top story is brought to you by Douglas Mattresses, which also has a. We're not going to do that, though. We're not going to do that. We're going to keep it clean.
Okay. Really, the way we went there.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh.
Tocchet would be the third Vancouver Canucks coach to win the award, following in the footsteps of Alain Vigneault and the late and legendary Pat Quinn. My question is it going to be unanimous? Is he going to get every single first place vote up against Winnipeg's Rick Bowness? And who's the other finalist? Blanking here. Didn't have it in front of me. Rick Bowness, Paul Maurice of the Florida Panthers, who are still. No, it's Andrew Burnett. What are you talking about? Put you on East and O's. Good God. Boy,
not Patrick Waugh.
No, Andrew Burnett of the end.
He's probably
going to be unanimous.
He's probably the second place finisher, I think. Burnett, isn't he?
I think so. Yeah, I mean, you don't really want to hold the time missed against Rick Bowness, because he did step away from the club on a couple of occasions this year for health matters or family matters, and yet. And Winnipeg had a very good year, don't get me wrong. But as I was sorting through awards ballots and things like that, availability and being there was, one of the criteria. So I think Rick Tocchet's going to win it. And I'm most interested if it's a unanimous vote for the Canucks boss.
Did the Connor Hellebuck factor into your
vote?
Show me a good coach, I'll show you a good goalie kind of mindset.
Yeah, it wasn't even that. And first of all, I don't even remember. Did we vote on Coach of the Year? I don't even remember if that was one of the things we voted on as PHWA. No, it's not. So
it's broadcasters only. Who is it?
Forget. Anyways, boy, this continues.
Let's
hear. It's just one big E&O.
Yeah.
Let's hear from Coach Tocchet. He spoke after the game on Monday about what can be achieved when you have an organization on the same page.
Losing always sucks. It stings, but makes you even hungrier. Like I said, I think I told you guys before, I'm lucky I got the staff I have. They were unreal. The organization has been unreal to me, and the staff. So for me, what I've learned, it's you get a connected group from the management, coaching, all the way down trainers, staff here. When you're connected, you can do some special.
They've had a good mix there,
and it's been
having that mix of players, of ex-players, and all of them within arm's length of their careers. I think it gave some metal behind what they said to the players and the culture. Wins, long careers for all the players that are involved here, some cups. So I think it mattered what they said to the Vancouver Canucks players. From Rick Tocchet right through the staff, down to the Twins even.
Well, I'm just glad they're back to being a functional organization. They were not a functional organization for a great many years. I was thinking back to it. The lunacy of Francesco going out and hiring Boudreau, and then like days later hiring Jim Rutherford, who would never have hired Bruce Boudreau.
Yeah.
Like, just think how ass backwards that is. If he just shows a little bit of patience, if you name an interim coach for a game or two, you don't go through what you went through last year.
Yeah.
With people just believing you're generally Yeah, I mean, people having questions not just about the organization and team performance, but just about the humanity of your organization, right? Like, you did that to a pretty good guy. Like, even as critics would say, Bruce Boudreaux's a pretty good guy.
Do you think it's possible? We've never asked this question.
Mhm.
If they do it in the right order,
Sure.
Rutherford first.
Yep.
Do they get Tocchet at that point? He would have been available.
I think so. Yeah.
And would it have fast-tracked what we've seen here?
Great question. Great question.
Like, does this year's success happen last year?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question.
They wouldn't have bought out OEL at that point. They wouldn't have got that cap space.
You don't think so?
No.
Why? Because you think the team would have been better? And
Well, no, it would have been that much more expensive at that point.
right.
And that many more years.
Right.
I don't think they would have pulled the trigger at that point.
But they could still have bought him out when they bought him out.
Yep. Yeah. That part maybe stays true. But would they have been even better last year? And maybe they don't get Lekaramaki as a
Wielander.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Wielander.
Yeah,
yes.
it'd be Wielander. But yeah, look, I'm just glad we're past those days, that we've got a functional organization, or a more functional organization than what we were looking at and covering and observing and evaluating for all those years. And suspect that this will be the first of at least a couple of trophies that the Vancouver Canucks win via the NHL awards, because I suspect that Quinn Hughes is going to win the Norris Trophy. Maybe even Elias Lady Bing.
Potentially.
Probably not, but we'll see. Grady, you wanted in?
Oh, I was just going to say on YouTube, Bop City says Rick Tocchet deserves the Jack Adams, but it's a hollow award. He has a lot of explaining to do about the numerous critical failures in the way the Canucks played and how coaching did not address this.
Yeah, we're going to get into some of that here in this opening block. Give me a second. First, I want to.
That happens for all the award, by the way. It's a regular season award, so you could, you could win the Rocket Richard Trophy and have no goals in your first round series, and your team gets ousted because you don't score. Right? It happens.
Yeah. Sportsnet's Mark Spector weighed in on Rick Tocchet, based out of Edmonton, and covered the series. He was taking questions from followers on X yesterday and said, perfect coach for that team. Miller, excellent leader. Hughes will grow. Good D. Many skilled guys, either small or perimeter, got pushed out. EL40 especially. I don't know if he conflated Lindholm
P and L are beside each other on the keyboard.
Pedersen, or if he just a typing mistake there. EP40. Depth can't be all Euro skill guys. Some, sure, not all. Need more Saskatchewan, less Stockholm.
Not a single guy from Stockholm on the roster.
Well, but even
place,
like what's depth in his mind? Like, what is because Lafferty is not Swedish. Dakota Joshua is not Swedish. Connor Garland's not Swedish.
DiGiuseppe's not
like
DiGiuseppe, Suter, Luger.
Suter's European, but he's on the top line, so that's not depth.
Well, he played
Shouldn't
down.
be on the
He
top
played
line.
he played down the lineup, and
Teddy Bluger's
Game
Latvian.
7.
Does anybody hate Latvians? Nobody hates Latvians.
I honestly thought we were past this in the discourse around hockey players, that Europeans are soft and Canadians are harder. I mean, I realize it's an old Don Cherry trope that if you go back 30, 40 years, yeah, sure. The European hockey was a different game, still on the bigger ice, less physical. It remains that way to a degree, but I think aspiring NHL players, regardless of what country they come from, but yes, even now in Sweden, Finland, Russia, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Latvia, and elsewhere, understand the differences between North American hockey and European hockey.
The toughest, most
and
physical,
tailor themselves to it.
The toughest, most physical player on the Canucks probably was Nikita Zadorov.
Right.
So if the Russians are okay, then you couldn't be talking about Ilya Mikheyev either, right? He doesn't qualify based on ethnicity because Zadorov was like, you can't have it all the way.
Is he right about perimeter players? Too many perimeter players on the Vancouver Canucks?
Sam Lafferty went to the net a bunch. Like, are you talking about like top line players or
He says
depth
depth. He
players?
says depth, and he says depth guys.
I mean, Mikheyev is a perimeter player, which is too bad because I think he's got the game that could actually go inside.
Yep.
But it just doesn't happen enough. Höglander,
I
same thing.
honestly don't see a lot of perimeter players there.
No. To me, perimeter player, I mean, I could say Suter maybe is a perimeter player.
Did Pettersson get involved between the dots enough for anyone's liking?
I mean, if you're talking the playoffs, no, he didn't get involved in any way. So, I mean, you almost just throw that out because it has nothing to do with interior or exterior players. He just wasn't himself, and he wasn't himself in the regular season. So he's in a completely different category. And look, Dakota Joshua was a very physical player. He's not afraid to go to the inside, but he didn't make his presence felt outside of a couple of games in the playoffs. So, you know, the best thing to do, maybe don't paint with broad brushes.
Yeah.
Case by case basis.
Right. See, the mentions there are filled up with Nicholas Kronwall, Swedish player.
Yeah.
Played a heavy game.
God, he was
Ask
annoying.
any winger who played against Nicholas Kronwall whether he was a soft player.
Literally from Stockholm.
And yes. And, you know, Kronwall's name has popped into my feed the last twice in the last week because
of the
jumpy Spectre comment and people citing Kronwall, but also the Elias penalty, the Elias Pettersson charging penalty, where charging is defined as jumps into in any manner.
Not that,
you know, people were asking, did every hit Nicholas Kronwall ever deliver not qualify as a charge? And to that, I would say, yeah, probably.
But the difference was Kronwall didn't have the puck and Kronwall was the hitter. And that was not the case with Pettersson, but we digress.
Yes. Got a question about that out here on the street, actually, on Hornby. Shout out Sparks, big Sekeres Price listener and Lions fan. Great to meet you. Wanted to read this. This is from a follower on X. And I thought it would incite a good discussion. I'm going to put it to you, Blake. His name's Montel. Says, I have to applaud Tocchet for the job he did, but I think my biggest issue with him, besides some kind of choices, was his offensive system. It looks like something from many years ago. We know about the PDO, but it seems he wanted a good offensive team to play a heavy game around the boards. What do you think? Is the offensive system of Tocchet, the chip and chase game, a little antiquated? And did he try and square peg in a round hole here with some of the personnel at his disposal and the way he wanted them to play?
I'm of two minds. It did frustrate me a lot. The dumping and the chasing, almost as a rule, really frustrated me. Given there's a lot of skill on the Canucks forward lines. At the same time, they faced two different teams that really wanted to prevent the Canucks from carrying the puck in.
And I don't think you wanted to go up and down with the Edmonton Oilers.
No, but that's not the alternative. That's not what the suggestion is. You've got, it's not about not playing defense yourself and not being defensively aware as a forward. Just because you enter the zone with the puck doesn't mean you're just like, woohoo!
No,
it doesn't matter what happens behind
what I'm saying is the more you try and enter the zone with control, the more likely you are to have some turnovers at the opposing blue line, and then, back the transition game goes the other way. But, I hear what you're saying. I think what Tocchet did here over the last year and a half was instill a baseline system and structure that would keep them competitive while somewhat under-talented. And because remember, he took over midway through last year, the talent level improved this year. I do think Tocchet and the coaching staff will adapt. I think that for several reasons. Number one, I think they're pretty smart people and understand that you can't fully fall in love with an identity as a head coach. You may want to instill it. You may use it as part of the overhaul process. You may use it as part of the enculturing process that you're doing with the new team. But as you go forward, I think you do have to be adaptable enough, agile enough to understand There are different ways to play, and you have to tailor the way you play to the talent provided to you, the guys who get off the bus.
Your system is the bedrock, but you have to be malleable.
Right, exactly. The other thing that I think, the other reasons why I think he'll adapt is when he gets better wingers,
Yes.
guys who are more comfortable with the puck on the stick, driving the center of
All
the
guys.
ice, shooting and scoring from distance. I think that will have an effect. And then the third thing I think, and I think we saw this a little bit with Alain Vigneault and the transformation that he went through as a coach, especially after Gillis got here. I think you're going to bang your head against the ceiling playing that way in today's NHL. I'm not sure you can win a Stanley Cup and win 4 rounds playing that way, because eventually you're going to run into teams that are really good with the puck on their stick. And you have to score enough goals to get through them.
And the dump and chase can work. The problem is you just got to get that puck back. If it's being dumped in and your F1 is pressuring, you need that support of that second forechecker. The problem the Canucks ran into, they were awful at ozone puck retrievals and those board battles of stringing together those consecutive passes.
And in part, that was because you had tired players
That's what I was
coming
gonna
back
say.
up after defending for 20, 30 seconds.
It's chicken and egg stuff.
After Connor McDavid and them had offensive possession.
It's chicken and egg stuff. Which is happening first? You're getting hemmed in, so then when you dump and chase, you can't chase because you got to peel off on the change.
Yeah.
So, how many times are they with a full head of steam able to chip it in and then attack and perform?
It's kind of like the short passing game in the NFL. It can get you to 10-7, 11-6. It can get you in the playoffs, and you may even have some success in the play. But if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you need
a big play.
Yeah, exactly. You need the home run threat. Like baseball, you can win with a bunch of singles and doubles hitters and stealing bases and this and that, but at some point you need the home run hitter. So look, Tocchet has done an exceptional job this year. I think he'll get better as a coach, and I think the talent around him should get better. Let's hope management doesn't fail him, because they do have some big and tricky decisions to make this summer and going forward. But I think as the talent level improves, particularly on the wing, I think you'll see Tocchet tailor what he is asking for a little bit to the talent available.
I think a big key is Ilya Mikheyev, and not him bouncing back. My hope for this is
to get to him.
Has disappeared.
Yeah,
but you can't have nearly $5 million as a healthy scratch on some nights. They've put it. Look at it in these terms. Like, it's not too dissimilar. The cap hit of Ilya Mikheyev and Brock frickin' Besser. It's under $2 million difference.
Yeah. Let's hear from Douglas, and then we'll get more into Mikheyev and other topics here.
If you're not getting a good night's sleep, you have to look at the mattress that you're on right now. It's the simplest way to make the biggest change in your life. Have more energy when you wake up. It's named Canada's best mattress on Canadian living, and find out why. Order today, douglas.ca/Canucks Army. And we have to remind you, this is a risk-free trial thing here. You have a 365-night risk-free trial. Don't like it? Get a full refund. No questions asked. And then Douglas, if you don't like it, by the way, they donate those mattresses to local charity. So it's not wasteful. Order today at douglas.ca/Canucks Army.
Rob Williams, our friend from the Daily Hive and Offside, wrote on an Ilya Mikheyev buyout. The Canucks would save $3.6 million on the cap next year by buying out Mikheyev, and $2.6 million the subsequent season. Then they would have 2 additional years of holding on to dead money on Mikheyev, 1 year at 1.55. Both years at 1.55 million. In other words, much like the Oliver Ekman-Larsson buyout, but without the long-term pain and the huge jump later in the buyout for Ekman-Larsson, there is a lot of short, immediate-term benefit here to the Vancouver Canucks to buying the player out. Now,
that also means in the year 25-26, there will be $7 million in dead cap space to Ekman-Larsson and Mikheyev if they do that.
Which year?
25-26. So not this coming year, but the year after.
Right.
$7 million.
But Keep Mikheyev on the books that year turns that 7 million into 9 million, 9+ million. So there's different ways to look at it.
Yep.
You also got to factor in what are they doing to replace that money?
To replace the player or replace the money?
Well, both, right?
Well,
'Cause you're buying the player out,
that's
you're gonna
it. You're buying the
distribute it
player
elsewhere.
out. You're getting savings, but now you're on the market for a winger.
So you have to
Look-
believe that even in the good years that you do the math, that's
Mhm.
3.7, 3.2. What can you get for 3.2? How much better is the player that you signed for 3.2?
Mhm.
Is that a free Dakota Joshua?
Now, of course, before
know?
we go down Buyout Boulevard here,
You try to trade.
well, of course you do.
Yes.
Of course you do.
And
It's
you
a
try
last resort.
and you try to retain because the retention is a way shorter term than the buyout. The buyout goes 4 years. You retained, it's only 2 years.
Right.
So it might sting a bit, even if you retain $2 million on Mikheyev. A little steeper than the buyout, but it's done in 2 years.
The buyout window opens as early as June 15th or 48 hours after the conclusion of the Stanley Cup Finals. The last day now for the Stanley Cup Final is June 19th. They have made up some time here in the playoffs, Blake. Don't worry. The
Phew.
final won't run right into the awards
Into
and
the
draft.
20s, yeah.
So the latest the window will open is June 21st. So somewhere between June 15th and June 21st, if the Canucks are not able to consummate a trade, they may have a buyout decision to make.
What's
on
the
Ilya
most you
Mikheyev.
retain?
It runs until June 30th.
What's the
no
most you
matter.
retain?
On
Well,
Mikheyev?
Yeah.
You try
go-
for the full 50, right?
Well, that's the most you can do. So you try
Yes.
not to do the full 50.
Right.
You try to do $1.5 million
Oh, I
or
see.
two.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you
Well,
think
I mean, given that it's a reasonably team-friendly buyout, I would draw a pretty firm line.
I'd go to 2?
Yeah, I'd go to 2 and then maybe no more.
Because then an acquiring team sees Mikheyev at 2.7 and thinks,
Yeah.
I can make use of that player.
Right.
Canucks,
Because then you're saving 275 in
both
each-
years.
in
You don't get
both
the
years.
you don't get that punitive year
Right.
2 years from now that I just talked about.
right. And one of those 2 years you're actually saving more.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's about fair.
Now, the other side to this is he's coming off that knee injury, and it sometimes can take up to 2 full years
Yep.
for a guy to be 100%
sure.
again. Is there a world where they say, you know what, we're going to try him one more time, see if you can
There is that
rehabilitate
world.
his
Yeah,
value?
you may have to.
Because he still has some usefulness.
That changes his
In the
feet.
bottom
That
six.
He
doesn't
was
change his
decent.
hands. That doesn't change his
Yes.
hands.
He was decently early going this year.
He
Now-
ultimately put himself in positions to shoot and score in great positions.
His underlines were pretty good in the postseason the
Yeah.
last time I looked at them.
But the flip side of that is you don't want a guy in your bottom 6 making all that money.
No, you don't. But hey, one thing that we've learned in the salary cap era is you're going to have some suboptimal situations on your team.
Yes. And pretty
You
much
know.
every team has that.
Right. Virtually every team has a guy in the bottom 6 who's getting paid too much, a guy in the bottom pair that's getting paid too much. Some cases you've got a multi-million dollar goaltender who sits the bench more than they play.
Bob City wants to know why he's writing comments and Sekeres and Price don't read them.
Oh,
We just did.
Okay.
which Bob?
No, Bob City on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
We read them.
We
if they're good.
literally I literally read his comment
Yeah,
earlier on.
okay.
Bob City be better. Yeah.
Come on, Bop.
Want to do and Frank Corrado mentions this later in the program. And in fact, we have a great discussion with Frank as well in terms of Tocchet and whether or not he thinks, and he of course played for Rick in Pittsburgh,
Mhm.
whether or not he thinks Tocchet will change as the team evolves. So be listening for that. But one of the things that Frank mentioned to us is that there are a whole lot of people around the National Hockey League who were quite, in some cases moved, in some cases confused by the huge ovation that the Vancouver Canucks received at the end of the series after blowing a 3-2 lead and really not being very good for the first half of Game 7.
All of Game 6.
Yeah, and all of Game 6. Just to show you how much things have changed here, Ian Mendez is a Lower Mainlander. He's a British Columbia guy. Grew up in Richmond. Now he's been back east for many, many years, writing for The Athletic. His tweet, I can't believe we're living in a world where the Canucks got cheered off the ice after losing a Game 7 on home ice. But that just shows you how much this group punched above their weight all season and how much that market appreciated.
And it's a savvy
their
fan base.
effort.
The new expectations.
That's just what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Blake. You know, Canucks fans get such a raw deal.
For just being mean. You
Well,
are
exactly.
mean, but you're also smart.
You know, Canucks Twitter, is so infamous around the 31 other NHL markets for being, some of the toughest fans out there, the most relentless, the whiniest, the complainiest, the most mean, this, that, the other thing. I thought it was appropriate.
High event tweets.
Yeah. I thought it was wholly appropriate. Yeah. Didn't like the way the Game 6 went down from tip to tail and didn't like the first half of Game 7 whatsoever. But the totality of 95 games this year, the fans were entertained. They got their money's worth, those who paid tickets at Rogers Arena. You got your time redeemed if you sat down and made time to watch these hockey games. You were taken on a journey. It was a compelling story.
And there were real reasons why they weren't moving on. There were real reasons why they weren't moving on.
And I think just about everybody recognized, you know what? Edmonton is a better team.
Yeah.
Edmonton is further along. And Edmonton, despite not looking very good in the series, despite having some goaltending that was gettable and that the Canucks didn't quite test, is the deserving winner here. So I was really proud of the scene in the moments after Game 7 and the way Canucks fans conducted themselves.
I saw a lot of teams getting feted off the ice in other markets as well. But, I think fans saw what they saw. I think they saw that they were outclassed anyway, probably. But you take away Thatcher Demko, you take away Brock Besser, and you have a non-contributing Elias Pettersson. Like, everybody was pretty realistic about what was about to happen. Could they have stolen the series? Yes, there's a universe not too far away from this one where they won that series. And they were about to get clobbered by the Stars.
Right.
So it is what it is.
And several players spoke to this. Let's hear from Connor Garland about the fact that this year's club turned it around and built a foundation.
We were a bad team for a while. And, we made strides this year to become a good team. And, you get into the playoffs and you look at our wins, and every game it's in overtime or they got their goalie pulled 6-on-5. We got guys eating shots, with everything they can. So it's a fine line in the playoffs, and it's a fine line in the regular season. And there isn't hey, let's get going here. We got get ready for playoffs. It starts from training camp, and we built a good foundation to be a good team for a while now. But this obviously sucks.
Imagine saying that out loud to yourself. We were a bad team for a while.
Yeah.
You were a part of that.
No,
no.
There's no ambiguity there.
No.
The guys who were on the team knew it. They were a bad team. JT Miller. And this was one of several times during the postseason where JT Miller acknowledges that it hit him emotionally. Take a listen.
Well, I'll tell you what, it hit me emotionally at the end of the game when they're cheering for us and clapping for us when you walk down the President's Club. And it's when you see that, you're in a good place at a good market, and it's just the beginning of hopefully really good things here in the future.
You went chipmunky there.
JT with his Alvin impersonation mid-sentence.
You got hacked.
Quinn Hughes, the captain, talked about a special bond being forged, finally, between this team and the fans.
Yeah, very special, and it's a special place to play, and that's part due to the city and the passion and the people have here, but also to this group and what we've accomplished the entire year, and our work ethic, and how we've endured ourselves to the fans. And but yeah, special atmosphere here in the playoffs, and my first go around in 5 years here, and it was very special for myself.
So bottom line, the next time someone tries to tell you that players and agents don't want to play in Vancouver because of the fans, call bullshit on them.
Yeah.
And you know who I'm talking about. You are lionized in this market if you play with heart, soul, complete effort, and even have a modicum of success.
We pushed back against that from the first moment we ever heard that. It
just
was
such
absolute bullcrap.
Bullshit.
Especially like
Now-
OEL, like all this water
OEL
being.
put two teams on his trade list, Boston and Vancouver.
Yeah.
So
And then
just don't buy that.
and then complain about the media
Right.
coverage when he started.
You know what? You know why players didn't want to play here for a few years? It's a dysfunctional organization.
Mhm.
Owner wants to be buddy with you, go to steak dinners. GM's dim, no plan, no success.
And if you
And
don't,
the tax jurisdiction thing, that is also real.
if
Some
you don't
players,
want to be
it's
held
every dollar
accountable,
increase.
if you don't want to be held accountable,
Exactly.
it's a bad place to be.
Exactly.
But for the players that believe in themselves,
Right.
Like
All those things.
Connor Garland,
And
honestly,
here's the thing.
loved it.
Exactly. And he was one of the guys who wanted out.
Yeah.
And he saw the flip side of the market. And now take a listen to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe it wasn't the fans. Maybe it was y'all. Maybe it was the losing. Maybe it was the lack of effort.
Back to the previous comment. We were a really bad team for a
Yeah.
long time. Yes. Yes. That soured your feeling of it. It soured
Yeah.
our
It's
feeling
not the
of it.
fans. This isn't a corrosive market. You know, I
It's the
sometimes get
media.
asked. I sometimes get asked, from people, and especially in Canadian markets, but even down in Seattle and elsewhere, oh, what's it like having to deal with that Canucks fan base? And I go, it's no different than any other fan base, particularly Canadian NHL fan bases. When the team sucks, they're going to let the team know that they suck. When the team does well, they get passionately behind them.
And as
But
Frank
this notion that, Vancouver and BC and Canucks fans and Canucks Twitter are this boogeyman that stand apart from any other fan. No, not really. It's just you were the class of the NHL for a couple of seasons on the forefront, the vanguard of sports science, and then you completely lost your way. And fans saw that for what it was, and they reacted accordingly. As fans are supposed to act. And here's the thing, fellas. If we're sitting here 2 to 3 years from now and they blow a 3-2 series lead in game 6 or a 3-2 series lead and lose on home ice in game 7, guess what? The fans are not going to react the way they reacted Monday because there will be an expectation. The fans are definitely smart enough. You remember against Chicago, the 2 years they lost in round 2 in a row, Blake, the fans understood then and would understand in this future case. No. Now that means things have to change.
Fans allow for a little bit of learning. They
now
allow for a little bit of learning.
Find a way to take the next step, however that may come.
But even Pettersson, he soaked it up at the end. He was one of the last guys off the ice.
I saw that.
Even with him, facing all the legitimate criticism about the way that he's played, I think he saw the fans chanting his name and saw that he was, being urged to find it, given some space even to, this is late in the second round. He still hasn't found it. You do wonder, what learnings will be made for Elias Pettersson and what that looks like. But even the most criticized guy in the playoffs for the Vancouver Canucks was lapping up the final moments of the playoff run. So that tells you a little bit about, by the way, Rai on Twitter or on YouTube, Pettersson did his best Naslund impression, regular season star, playoff dud. I don't know what you were watching, Rai, but Marcus Naslund in the 03 playoffs and in the 04 playoffs was better than a point per game, 23 points in 21 games. If the Canucks got better than a point per game out of Elias Pettersson, we were talking about a very different playoff for the Vancouver
we're
Canucks.
talking about a round 3 series.
Yes.
against the Dallas Stars.
I think you're right. Canucks will hold their media availability, clean out the lockers, all that on Thursday. A lot of situations that I'm sure we'll learn more about, including injury situations to a number of players. I want to focus on one right now because he's not the chattiest guy, so I'm not sure if there will be much that comes out of tomorrow by way of sound bites, clips, information on Filip Hronek. But if it's revealed tomorrow that Hronek was playing through a pretty significant injury and has been for some time, would that change anybody's opinion on whether he's an $8 million player going forward?
I've never thought he can get $8 million elsewhere. So that can be quote unquote market price. But what the Canucks are willing to pay Filip Hronek is allowed to be a different number.
Well, I believe Irf reported it was 6.5 that they offered him.
Yeah. And the agent can jump up and down. He's not worth. That's fine. Like, you can go find that money elsewhere. That's the whole point. Is in our pay structure, that doesn't work for us. It's like Nikita Zadorov. Nikita Zadorov, he might get a crazy $6.6 million a year deal from somebody.
I was getting to Zadorov.
Canucks can't pay that. So you have to stay within the bounds of sanity for your team. Just because Jack down the street is willing to give that money doesn't mean you have to.
Agreed.
It doesn't mean that is the reasonable amount. There is a long list of National Hockey League players that are paid way more than they should be under anybody's roster, but people get desperate, and so they overpay. But that isn't the true market value. That was the market value for stupid Jack down the street, but that's not really what he should be making in the NHL. So if Filip Hronek wants something that begins with an 8, that's not for the Vancouver Canucks. It just is not. And if he has an injury, that explains some of the depreciation of his stats, but it doesn't mean that, I should just pay him $8 million a year now.
Well, I'll be curious to see where that injury came from on the schedule, because in the second half of the regular season wasn't very good.
But if you're good enough to play, you're good enough to contribute in some way. And Filip Hronek contributed almost in no ways for the better half of a season.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you this. Okay, you're not willing to go to $8 million for Filip Hronek. Are you willing to pay Brandon Montour or Brett Pesce $8 million plus to be your number one pair right side guys? Those would be the top free agent defensemen available outside of Myers and Chris Tanev, who we can have conversations about going forward. But Pesce and Montour, would you pay either of those guys $8 million? Montour played 23 minutes per night this year, scored 33 points. Pesce, as we know, is not a big offensive guy. I believe it was only 13 points for him this year, but also a 20-minute plus defenseman.
Montour's going to be an interesting study because he dropped 40 points this year from 73 to 33. And he is 30. He's got the big 3 to start his age. Pesce is 28, I think, as we speak.
He's 29.
29 now?
Yeah. It was 13 points this year in 70 games.
Yeah, so you get a lot less offense out of him. But what is it like? Is this going to be a precipitous drop off for Brandon Montour? I don't know. I would be more inclined, though, based on defensive responsibility, to pay a guy like Pesce that kind of money. Pesce can be a 10 of sort of presence there on your pairing.
And okay, but we spent a good part of the first portion of the year, let me bring you both back there, to talking about how defense pairs have changed. And you don't want to saddle an offensively creative guy like Quinn Hughes with a pure defender. You want to play him with someone who is also good on the puck and can bring out the best of him, as opposed to a guy who is simply going to be the stay-at-home cover up in case Quinn gets caught.
But that's a great segue into a guy like a Tanev. Tanev gets you no points, but he moves the puck beautifully, and he can play with a puck with a point getter beautifully. So it's not a granite block. You're not putting him with a guy that doesn't move and doesn't move the puck.
Well, although
what?
Tanev moves the puck, but he's 34 years old, Blake. Like how much longer is Chris Tanev?
No, I'm not advocating for Tanev. Tanev is a very risky sign, especially at the numbers that he's probably going to, unless Chris Tanev is signing for the exact same money he made this year. I'm not in on Chris Tanev if I'm the Vancouver Canucks.
And he's getting a raise after this.
You would think.
Oh, he's at $4.5 million, and particularly if Dallas goes on to win the cup or even just get to the cup.
Yeah.
Hey, here's my next question on the Hronek side. Are there going to be teams lining up to trade you a top pair right shot defenseman so that they can acquire Hronek and then have to pay him $8 million per? Because he's going into the final year of his deal. Any team that's going to acquire him is going to want a contract extension with him. They're not just going to pay you a top pair right shot defenseman in return. to keep Hronek around 1 year on whatever the arbitration amount is and then wave goodbye to him in unrestricted free agency. So how difficult is a trade of Filip Hronek to replace what he effectively is, your top pair right side guy?
I think you do it later. So what you do is you tender the qualifying offer to Filip Hronek, get him locked up for you for next year. You go out
he files for arbitration.
And what's the concern there?
Well, he's going to file for arbitration, and then he's going to get, $8 million or thereabouts, and it's going to be a 1-year deal.
I'll believe he gets $8 million in arbitration when I see it.
Well, I mean, Cervelli's explained this to us all year. The case is there. Like,
I'll believe when I see it.
And
okay, so let's say it's 7-7.
Yeah,
like that changes the price of tea for you.
I think the optics are a little bit better for an acquiring team.
Okay,
but again, hear me out.
Take on the nut here.
Yeah, hear me out. So you tender that, he's signed, sealed, and delivered for next year. Then you go out and you see if you can sign one of Pesce or Montour if they get to free agency. You see if you can do that, and then if you do, then you trade Filip Hronek not for a top pairing defenseman. You trade him for a winger.
Yeah.
And you pay it's a bit of a sunk cost there.
Right.
You didn't get the full value out of Filip Hronek, but you've avoided overpaying. Again, this is something that happens with the NHL GMs all the time.
Montour or Pesce, you can
what's that?
So you feel better about the way Pesce or Montour will age at $8 million per year than Hronek. Is this what I'm hearing?
Yes, there's a proof of concept there for those guys being at the top of their games in their roles.
But Hronek is 36. The guys we're talking about are several years. They're
26
or 26.
Yeah,
the guys we're talking about are older. Pesce's 29.
That's
Montour
what I'm saying. They've proven what they are year to year.
But you're paying them for their non-peak years.
Do you know
still
what
have peak years?
Do you know what Filip Hronek is? What kind of how would you even describe Filip Hronek? What is he? I have no idea.
And he's an all situations defenseman with a hell of a shot, who's one of the scarcest commodities out there.
A shot that he never used.
A shot that he used plenty in the first half of the season.
Right. So why didn't he use it in the second half?
I think you're going to hear about an elbow injury tomorrow.
I'm going to need more information on that.
Well, okay.
So we can talk about that when we have more information at our disposal. But
so if you
Matt, we don't have the information.
No, I understand we don't have the information.
So he didn't shoot. He was okay in all situations, but he's not great in all situations. He's not a defensive defenseman. He couldn't hold the blue line in the playoffs.
Got beat lot one-on-one.
Hammered against the inboards.
Guys, I just think that we are fixating on his profile in the second half when, again, I think you're going to hear about a significant injury here.
Yep.
Have we completely forgotten what he was in the first half? Outside of Rick Tocchet and a healthy Thatcher Demko, he's on the podium in terms of reasons why the Canucks turned it around.
He was wonderful.
One of their most important and indispensable players through the first 40 games.
What does he do well defensively?
I mean, I have to take a deeper look, but for the most part, I think he's in pretty good position. I think he's got a pretty decent stick. He's not a weak guy by any stretch. He's got some strength to him.
The number of
much like Quinn Hughes, he is able to avoid having defending because he's pretty good with the puck on his stick. He moves it, and they create offensive.
I would challenge there. Like there's not a single time that I saw him carrying the puck, eluding players that I thought.
I'm not talking about a one-man breakout play. I'm talking about he makes a good first pass. He gets the puck out.
Good, yeah, not great. Okay. I'm not paying him $8 million. His breakout pass. Like it's just not there. Can he shoot? Can he be an offensive contributor from the blue line? Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm playing devil's advocate here a little bit. It's not that I disagree with your position or I'm fully on board with Hronek, but let me throw one more thing at you since we're having this discussion. You know, the old axiom in hockey, you make a trade, you're less likely to know more about the guys you're bringing in than the guys you're moving out. You know what Hronek is. You know what he isn't. You've got more unknowns with a Montour or a Pesce, no?
I mean, you got more unknowns from a first-hand perspective.
The fit on your new team.
And the fit to some degree, but they've got longer resumes. Jim Rutherford probably has a lot of friends in the Carolina organization, probably still. And I think they're a pretty known quantity in the National Hockey League.
Okay.
You've also got now a little bit of an education. We were all surprised. Why did Steve Yzerman give up on Philip Hronek?
Right.
He's an incomplete player.
No, I think it was Steve Yzerman knew that this was going to be a difficult.
Well, that's what I mean. But if he was a complete player, Matt, you'd just give him the money. You'd be happy giving him the money.
Complete players, I mean, there's so few in the NHL. You do have to accept players with faults. That's something.
Well, Pesci doesn't give you offense, for instance. But if you do one thing particularly well, then that's worth it. And I don't care what the injury was. If he's injured, if he's so
foolish.
injured,
Like, that's foolish,
Matt. No, it's not. If you are so injured that you are a shell of the player that you should be, you shouldn't be in the lineup. Do you expect a downtick? Sure, I can accept a downtick. He was 0.7 points per game before the injury. He went down to 0.5 points per game. Yeah, no problem. He was a little bit dinged. To have the bottom fall out, like, sit him, get him 100%. Like, why wasn't that a consideration? Should they have sat him in January? Where did it all go? Because it was the desert all of a sudden for Philip Hronek. And so if you are completely muting the one thing that you do particularly well, what's the point in him being in the lineup? That's my point.
What about Zadorov?
Give him all the money.
So,
well, where's the
on
walk
13 games? On 13 games, you're going to look at it and say,
"No, we loved him in the regular season too."
Okay,
and
so you're going to pay 3 left shot defensemen, and you're willing to walk away from your number one right shot.
I say it somewhat in jest. Okay. There is obviously a cap, and if the agent gets crazy with demands, no, you have to walk away from that player too. But I'm willing to listen up to a pretty decent number for like a 6 times 5 deal for Nikita Zadorov. Yeah, I think about that.
AFP Analytics has him projected with their most recent update 5 times 5.3.
Yeah. What's Hronek?
And I do that.
They have Hronek at a long-term deal now at 7 times 7.5 or shorter term 3 times 6.1.
I don't think he's signing that deal.
No.
And they had him before at 8.3.
Yeah, he was over 8. So he cost himself some money. So when I said 7.7, that's roughly what you're looking at. And that's if he accepts it.
I just think we have to be careful about, agents sending out vibes to the insiders.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm saying my player's signing for $8 million, and everybody just takes that. Oh, he's going to be an $8 million player. Well, no,
I guess what
an $8 million player on one team doesn't mean he's an $8 million player. Like, if that was the case, Ilya Mikheyev's a $5 million player. Like, no, he's not.
The AFP analytics site, that's why it's useful, is that it takes every contract out there
and tax breakdowns.
Exactly.
They factor that in.
Exactly. So it's a pretty comprehensive site in terms of predicting contract value. Doesn't mean it's always 100% accurate, because all it takes is one GM or owner to lose their mind, and the next thing you know, somebody.
That's my point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm a little curious and frankly somewhat vexed, Blake, that because we really liked a guy for 13 games in the postseason, you're willing to go 6 years on him now at his age.
Recency
bias. But you're going to throw out the totality of the first half of the season with a guy who is a better player, was a better player, is a better player, and plays the more scarcer position.
Well, we're not equating the two values, right? Those are very different contract values. So, yeah, I'm willing to take.
You're going 6 years on Zadorov.
Well,
6.
What was
He's 29 years old.
It was 5 by 5.3, wasn't it? Wasn't that the AFP? We're going.
No, but you said you would go 6 at 5.
No, 6 million.
Oh, 6 million over 5 years.
Yeah. That would be my high end. And
so you'll pay Zadorov $1.75 to $2 million less on a deal that's 1, maybe 2 years less than Hronek, but he's 3 years older.
Ready, tall defenseman, aging pretty well here with a guy like Tyler Myers. You can't teach size.
And his athletic tools are awesome.
And you say sample size, and that's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is in the most important games of the season, he was amongst the best players on the ice for the Vancouver Canucks, and the most important. Those are the most important games. So you're telling me about the guy that ripped it up from October to December. Okay. I mean, great.
Well, but again, like I suspect you're going to hear about a significant injury to Hronek that he played through. And, it's funny because sometimes those players are lionized in the Stanley Cup playoffs and sometimes they're villainized.
But the ones that are lionized, Matt, are the ones that still contribute. Steve Yzerman scoring those goals on one leg.
For sure.
They
didn't contribute enough. No one is going to argue that he contributed enough. I'm just saying, when you remove the emotion from it, one guy is the scarcest commodity on the National Hockey League marketplace. If you are going to overpay for one position on a hockey team, it's your top pair right shot defenseman. Why? Because if you don't have one, you don't have a chance. And the supply does not meet the demand.
Right.
So you have to go over and above.
But the Canucks have the ability.
Left shot, third pair defenseman, you don't have to go over and above.
The Canucks have the ability to safeguard themselves. The timeline permits that they can get him safely in the back pocket, where if they need to use him, they need to use him. But then they can go out and see if there's another option that makes him dispensable. So they don't have to gamble on.
Well, I would argue that is a gamble. Yes, you have alternatives. You have options. Yeah, you do. But I would argue it's a bigger gamble to go out and sign a 30-year-old to an $8 million deal that you don't know than it is to try and do a deal with a guy and works when he's healthy with your club who is younger.
Well, first of all, you don't know that it's $8 million for Pesce. We'll see. And you get the benefit of being in the negotiations without having to commit.
Fair. I mean,
why wouldn't you?
If you can get Pesce at a lot less than that, then
again, it's Lou Lamoriello rule. You've got the ability to be in on that. Why wouldn't you be in on it?
Right.
And if you have to make a move on Hronek, then you have to make a move on him. But if you don't, you don't.
5 times 6.2 projected for Pesce.
6.2. Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Well,
5 years at 6.2. See, if you get that contract, I'm ready to make that move rather than $8 million.
What is AFP saying on Montour?
6 times 7.7.
Yeah.
Because he's got the more offensive contributions.
That's right.
And he was coming off a pretty
we'll
tough
see how
injury.
it shakes out.
And I will say just one thing, and Canucks fans, they want to trade Hronek for Martin Necas. They want to trade him for Nikolai Ehlers. We have spent how long asking for a competent partner for Quinn Hughes, and finally Hronek elevates Hughes.
Well, that's
now, Hughes elevates Hronek. I would just caution people, be careful on wanting to trade this asset out after wanting something of his quality for so long.
Well, this is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
Yeah.
The year-to-year expected average of the cap's going up. I know Hronek has his deficiencies, but it's not like that deal is going to be an albatross going forward. It is likely to age pretty decent if he continues to play with you.
And it's probably going to age better than a 29 or a 30-year-old.
Yeah.
Okay. How about this, guys? How about this? Asking the Canucks to improve their wingers and improve the right side of the defense is too much to ask in one offseason.
It might be too big for this offseason. I mean, Alvin and Rutherford talked about that last summer. They were talking about how this is a continuous project, right? And a process.
Like you can,
like they were as surprised as anyone else that the team performed as well this year. So, we knew this was a multi-year project, and it still could be a multi-year project.
So you can bring in like one extra winger maybe, but to really solve the problem, you probably have to choose one or the other.
Right.
Like, is it crazy for them to sign Philip Hronek and sign Brett Pesce?
No.
And then just nibble and get another $4 million winger to aid the winger problem.
And then you deal with winger at the deadline if you're in it, right?
Yeah.
And people are asking on YouTube, how are they going to be able to afford Zadorov and Hronek at their expected ask?
Yeah, and I'm not sure they can.
Yeah, there's a
Which
lot
is
of
why
things
you
to
have
answer.
to prioritize. But just make no mistake about this. If you remove the top pair right shot defenseman and don't adequately replace, the Jenga tower comes down.
Well, no one's saying don't adequately replace. No one's suggesting that.
No, but that's a risk. If you just, this guy's too rich for us, let's go out and find a, like Pesci could fall off the table at his age, right? With his miles and the way he plays.
He just turned 29. I don't think he's fallen off the
Well,
table.
probably not, but there's been many a free agent out there that hasn't worked out in the least with their new team. You know, Hronek, when healthy, works here. And we have this discussion, and we talk about big defensemen in the playoffs. And I was struck by this tweet from Garrett Hole. And we've had Garrett on the show before. Vancouver guy. Hockey Data Inc. Hockey Graphs on Twitter. At the 5 Hole. In not actually meaningful fancy stats. Good lead. Edmonton is the NHL's only remaining team of the top 8 largest defense teams in the playoffs. All 7 of the other 8 in size on the blue line have been eliminated. Edmonton, the second biggest defense in the Stanley Cup playoffs. The remaining teams, Dallas, 9th, Florida, 14th, New York Rangers, 15th.
Mm-hmm. It can't be attracted to
it's
one
not
thing.
It's not a year in, year out rule
No.
about the big defensemen in the playoffs. There are some very acute examples. We saw one in 2011 with Zdeno Chara and how he was able to affect space. We saw it with the St. Louis Blues the year they won, all those monsters on the back
Vegas
end.
last year.
And Vegas too.
Mm.
But it's, and the game has changed a little, but the Detroit defense when they were playing wasn't big monsters.
Well, big enough.
It was
but just good.
pound for pound, tough guys who could move the puck.
Yeah.
And understood how to defend. I mean, Lidstrom and Rafalski were not scaring anybody with their shirts off.
No.
So I hear Tocchet, and for the most part, I believe in what Tocchet preaches about the big defensemen, and particularly in the Stanley Cup playoffs, because for me, at a certain point, it's just about the geometry, right? It's just about physical matter, physics, facts, science. But it's not always a 1 + 1 = 2.
No, but I mean, if you just objectively look, who are the shakiest defensemen for the Canucks in the playoffs? It was Hronek and Cole, who were amongst the smaller ones, but not because they were small. They had the shakiest performance.
Cole having the most playoff experience.
I think it's because they were probably playing through the most injury, the most pain and discomfort. I think that's probably going to come to light tomorrow. In Cole's case, it may also be his age in a long season, and the fact that that's a pretty fast team, and he just looked like he couldn't keep up. And not to mention, and I think it compounded with some of the mistakes that he made in his own zone.
Well, that's what I was going to say. The mistakes that we saw were not about to be crunched. I'm sorry. They were decisions.
Yeah.
Poor decisions. So.
Yeah, the Hronek thing is going to be very interesting. We'll track it through the offseason here. Last point on this, we were all ready to throw Besser and Garland out of town, right? And they bounce back. I think it is going to be, I think you are going to hear of an injury. I think it was primarily an injury with Hronek. But I would not throw the baby out with the bathwater here because he played a poor second half of the season and likely did so with some sort of ailment.
By the way, that was a segment that we would have gotten into in on the old radio show, and we would have made us 20 minutes late for our commercial break.
Right.
Like that was
right.
Remember, we used to get into big, heated debates, and all of a sudden we'd look at the clock and we were like already well into the next hour, and the boss was at the window.
Your poor producer.
No,
Take a damn break.
Hey, and we're not done with it because Farhan just texted me and said, remember, Hronek came here as damaged goods. Remember he had an entry on it?
Yep.
That's right.
Because he played those, I think it was 4 games.
Yeah,
and then
whatever,
he
handful
went
of
down.
games. Yeah.
And Farhan asked me, he said, if it's the same arm, is he damaged goods? Does that change your opinion? Yeah, it might.
And are we
you
really,
want medical certainty?
And are we really going to get the full information anyhow tomorrow? I think they're going to guard whatever is.
Well, I would think if Alvina and Rutherford do a presser and get asked about it, they'll probably give up that.
They'll want to for negotiation
Yes,
tactics.
I was just going to say.
Well, I think they'll also
negotiations.
want to, because I think they'll realize the market's all over the player, and there's good reason why he wasn't the same guy.
Now,
Protect your guy.
that can back up the backfire here, Grady, because if you say he's injured, then the agent can say, yeah, but he's a great player. He was injured and he did that.
Yep.
Versus the team can say, oh, he was injured. He's damaged goods. And he's always injured. So got to be careful which perspective is seen.
Are we doing parlay challenge today? Games.dailyfaceoff.com. Blake Price has been our parlay challenge performer, looking to win us the gift cards and the cash.
And
we're on to a new round here. Now, if you play every day, go on to games.dailyfaceoff.com. Nightly winners win gift cards. Round winners win cash. So we got all our eggs in Blake Price's basket, hoping that he can win us some cash here in the conference finals. What you looking at?
Going on the money line with the Florida Panthers here in game number 1 versus the Rangers. Taking the over for goals, over 5.5. I think it'll be a little bit loose. Rangers tend to play some offensive games. I think it's kind of a crazy game 1. Florida gets the first goal. Highest scoring period, the first, because again, I think it's this. I don't think there's this feeling out first period. These two teams, I think they get after it a little bit. Artemi Panarin assists. I got the over. That means he gets 1. I've also got him later on coming up with a goal. Barkov and Reinhart. I've got over goals for Reinhart, under goals for Barkov. So there we go. I think we got some goals. I think it's a 4-3, 5-3 game.
A couple of things I like about this series. Number one, Rangers in Carolina was some of the best hockey that I've watched this postseason. Not to mention those 2 crazy third periods to end that series, 4-goal periods, each taking turns in the third period. So
and there's more offense for Florida.
To underpin your crazy. The other thing I love about the MSG crowd is just sensational.
Yeah.
That's why I was pulling for the Knicks as well. There is nothing like a New York City crowd. And to hear them full-throated in a league semifinal for the Rangers, of course, 30 years since their last Stanley Cup. Hate to remind everyone. And I also love the fact that there's a Canadian team left standing with the Canadian crowd, because those are the sort of the crowds that stand out to me.
I got to tell you, man, I was in New York at the start of the playoffs.
Right.
First round.
Caps and Red Bulls.
I was actually in New Jersey. We're staying in Harrison, New Jersey. I have never, ever heard more hockey spoken in the streets in the United States than I did that weekend.
Yeah.
And that's in New Jersey, where the Devils weren't even in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I heard bartenders talking, and this was not even talking to me, bartenders talking about the Colorado-Winnipeg series with interest and perspective and takes. Like, it's a pretty good hockey market. We don't give them enough credit.
Well, here's the thing. It's a better hockey market now because all 3 teams have good buildings, because the Islanders aren't a embarrassment to the league.
Yeah.
The Devils had a very poor season, but there's some attractive talent on that team.
For sure.
And of course, in New York City, Manhattan, you got to win. And the Rangers, when they win, are a really big deal.
I don't remember the last time I heard casual NHL talk in the United States, period, full stop. And we heard it multiple times. It was great.
Heard it in Vegas in March. We encountered a couple from Minnesota at the piano bar. You know how that goes.
You and the damn piano bar.
I like piano bars. Let's get to today's menu. It's brought to you by Greta 50 West Cordova, a great spot to go pregame, postgame. They got the fantastic arcade. Go check them out, Greta 50 West Cordova. We'll talk to Frank Corrado here, former Vancouver Canucks TSN hockey analyst, on, well, the series and the summer ahead. We'll talk to John Shannon as well about the series and the summer ahead. Also have the golf report brought to you by the Whistler Golf Club. Now, time for our Bet365 bets of the day. I am on that Rangers Florida series.
Okay.
Chris Kreider with the hat trick in New York's clinching game against Carolina. Exploded in the third period, as we mentioned. He's got 7 goals in these playoffs. He tends to score in bunches. Now, he's up against some really good defensive forwards, like Barkov, your Selke Trophy winner. West Vancouver Sam Reinhart has turned into a complete player. I was glad to see him get Selke Trophy love. Lundell and some of their other guys can check as well. But I'm going to say Kreider scores again tonight in front of the home Garden crowd. Anytime goal scorer in game one, he pays at plus 180.
I think Sam Bennett's going to be charged up for this series.
27-year-old Sam Bennett?
27-year-old Sam Bennett. I'm going to be far more modest, but I think he's going to be active. And I don't mean just punching you in the face active. Sam Bennett, remember, has some offensive chops. I'm not looking for points or goals, but I think I'm going to take him on the over for shots.
Shots.
Over 2.5 pays at a plus 150.
Whoa, that's my alley.
What are you laughing at?
You know, you're a D-gen when.
How many
Lost bets I've had.
Just help us out here. No.
Taking shots away.
So we've been now in a world with just one NHL game per night, or at least it started Monday. How many bets are you going to have on a 1-game night? Ballpark it for me.
Grady?
I actually haven't been betting much of late, but on a good engaged, Grady is being a D-gen night about 4 to 5.
Okay.
He invoked his own name there.
Third person drop. Open an account with Bet365 today and bet on a huge range of markets. So whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code BANBONUS. Oh my God, did we go late today?
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it now. Frank Corrado's next. Northlands Golf Course. Download the free app and book tee times with a touch of your thumb. And while you're on course, open the app for hole-by-hole GPS and track your score. 6 to 90-day reservations. Jump the queue. Lock in your date for $10 per player booking fee. Limited daily availability. Check it all out. GolfNorthlands.com.
Hey, you. No, not you. You. Are you an owner-operator? You have a fleet of trucks or cars? Well, CalPro Plus might be the dedicated tire program just for you.
Free program includes exclusive deals and savings, price match guarantee, flexible financing, and preferred pricing on everything you drive.
Also, you get a dedicated member support line. That means that you can get questions answered. Also, they'll source and recommend the right tire for you, your application, and your budget.
Cal Tire's network of 260 plus stores are here to help so you can focus on the road ahead. Sign up for free at calproplus.com.
The Vancouver Canadians are back at the Nat. Catch fireworks, giveaways, and Friday nooners all spring and summer long. Get your tickets at CanadiansBaseball.com.
Joined now by TSN hockey analyst, former Vancouver Canuck, the one and only Frank Corrado. How we doing?
Okay, over here. How you guys doing? How's the city? Everyone okay? Things are. The sun came out. How we doing?
The sun came out 2 days later.
The sun didn't come out yesterday.
Yeah, it didn't come out yesterday.
And we get a bad rap. Look, we only riot after Stanley Cup Final Game 7. All right, not second round game.
Pretty strict
7.
criteria.
How riotous do you think we are?
Yeah.
So did I see pictures of establishments boarded up, or were those just photoshopped?
I believe there was one or two panicky, nervous Nellies.
It was file footage from the previous riots that people were jokingly putting out as this is what's happening.
Man, Canucks Twitter. Hey,
now,
just
what I will say,
I
will say is the cops were ready because we saw some patrols even on Saturday. During Game 6, the police were out in fuller force patrolling just to show the presence and make sure everybody.
I don't know why we're joking about it. Like it's actually quite a bizarre thing that happens. Like it shouldn't really be a laughing matter, but I guess.
I think honestly, people left the arena as a home game, Game 7 loss, and we're like, sucks, but fun ride. And that was the overwhelming sentiment that we heard from people. They just had a lot of fun being back in the mix.
You saw the ovation, right?
Yeah. You know what's crazy? Like being out east, I heard a lot of people say, how come Vancouver fans are so happy with the way things went there? How come, they play the way they do in Game 6, they play the way they do in Game 7, and everyone's just like, yeah, let's just embrace it. We're happy that it happened. And I was like, well, that team hasn't really, that fan base hasn't had a lot to cheer about. And that team exceeded expectations all season long. And that was a group that if you're a fan of a team, you can be really proud of and you can really get behind. And people couldn't wrap their head around that. They're like, well, if that happened, where I am or out here, it'd be like, it'd be seen as a failure. Like that's the furthest thing from a failure what that group did all season long. It's weird, the way it's being perceived on the East Coast and on the West Coast.
Frank,
Yeah.
did you say that conversation happened in Toronto? People were wondering why a
yes.
second round loss was being applauded. I think Leafs fans would dream of a second round loss at this point.
Well, a second round like that, like the second round the Leafs had last year, they got the doors blown off them by Florida. Like this was Vancouver pushing Edmonton right to the brink. I mean, I haven't seen that in a long time.
And I think, look, you have to understand the depths of despair this fan base was put through. I mean, after the Stanley Cup loss, come back, win a President's Trophy, lose in 5 games to LA, get swept the next year, then go into a deep, dark place for a number of years where, the franchise was, embarrassing to them. A lot of people disassociated with the franchise, didn't believe it was a good employer, didn't believe there were good people running it. Like it was, really, really terrible here for a long time. So, yeah, this season was absolutely a rousing success, even if it ends in Game 7 and even if it ends with them squandering a 3-2 series lead. Let me ask you, Frank, now that you've had 24 hours or so to marinate on it, when you look back on this series and why the Canucks lost it, what comes to mind?
I mean, just not being able to generate offense at the right time has to be first and foremost. 15 shots in game 6, 17 shots in game 7. I know Edmonton did a lot to block shots, especially in game 7, but you have to find a way to take advantage of a goaltender who comes into a series after being pulled, who's got a lot of pressure on him. Like that should have been a golden opportunity for Vancouver to have some urgency offensively. And they were never able to muster that up. You have to give the Oilers credit because they really buttoned things offensively, and they had to, because if they didn't, the series probably would have went Vancouver's way. But that'll be my biggest takeaway is that, in the most critical of games, the offense dried up, and that is ultimately why they're not able to win in game 6 or game 7.
I was looking at Natural Statrics playoff long stats, team stats. So 16 teams on the list because we started there, of course. So the Corsi 4 is about where you'd expect for the Corsi 4 percentage, about where you'd expect for the Vancouver Canucks. They were 10th out of 16 teams. The shot attempts were a little bit lower than what you wanted to. Certainly shots on goal were a little bit lower than where you wanted. Expected goals for percentage. And this plays right into Rick Tocchet's hands. 6th out of 16 teams. And amongst the teams that made it to the second round, only Colorado and Dallas are above them. They did listen to Rick Tocchet. They waited to get quality looks, and they got quality looks. They usually didn't score on those quality looks at the end of the day, but their expected goals for percentage well above the Oilers, who were 9th. Canucks were 6th, the Oilers were 9th in expected goals for percentage.
I know, and you know what? I think the timing of when those higher quality chances would be really interesting to see, because in Game 7, when did Vancouver really turn the table in Game 7 and apply all that pressure on Edmonton? Would it have been like 10 minutes left in the third period, roughly? Like,
well, if you look at the graph, it actually it was earlier than it felt like to the eye. Their graph goes straight up at the 10-minute mark of the second, to be honest.
Okay.
But the third period certainly felt more like it.
Yeah, like the third period felt like Vancouver was coming on strong, and Edmonton was sitting back. They were content to high flip pucks. But you're right. Like, I think we kind of know, or we think we know, how Tocchet wants the team to play and what their process is like offensively. It's nice to see the evidence like that. But I don't want to bring this back to Toronto. I hate doing this, but I'm going to, because I follow the Leafs a lot, and they have such a hard time scoring like the greasy rebound goal, and in the playoffs, it's okay every once in a while to take one of those low percentage shots, and hopefully it leads to something, leads to a rebound goal, leads to something getting batted in off a defenseman's stick. And you take a look at the way Edmonton scores in Game 7. It's Cody Ceci from the point. It's like that's the type of shot that maybe they pass up in Vancouver. That Cody Ceci takes it goes in. Bouchard was really good at getting shots through that entire series, and Zach Hyman just plants himself in front. It's not a high percentage shot. It ends up being a high percentage play because Hyman can tip it, and then your power play gets you one. Like that's where I feel like you have to be a little nimble in the quality versus quantity chat. Yes, you want the quality, but sometimes like the kind of lower percentage outside stuff can lead to something of significance on the interior of the ice.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought that up because it was on my list of questions to ask you if they fell a little too in love with their method of looking for that more quality shot. What do you think, Frank? Do you think that Tocchet and the coaching staff will adapt as better offensive players get in here, or do you still think that they're going to be a team that wants to play this same style, chip and chase, hold on a possession, wait for that quality shot, as opposed to being a little bit more throw pucks on net and see if we can get rebounds, the snarly goals, not to mention guys who can finish a little bit when they do get that quality opportunity.
I kind of see this coaching staff, after watching them together and having success for a year, they're going to do whatever the game requires. Like, I don't think they're going to be really bogged down and say, we have to be this. The structure and the schemes and the routes they're going to skate, those are all going to be there. And those kind of lead you to having that foundation that you can kind of fall back on at times when, when maybe your game doesn't feel like it's as explosive offensively as it should be. But I think they're all very and what certain teams require you to do in order to beat them. So I kind of see like it'll be a reflection on this year on how things went. Then you're going to see what do you have personnel wise coming in next year, because there could be some significant changes to the group. And if that happens, you do have to adjust and pivot in the way you play. Like if you have guys that are really good off the rush, you can't be a dump and chase team because you're going to stymie those guys' way of attacking. So that, I think, along with the reflection and evaluation on how things went this year, you are going to have to see, who's coming in the picture next year, and how does that group play in order to have success. Ultimately, though, I think Tocchet and his staff is going to have some say in saying, can you get us this type of player because we want to play this type of game? And I think that's a really good thing. It's good to have that open communication and have everyone on the same page, because now everyone, it's more cohesive from top to bottom, and you really can lean on having an identity, which I think is really important any time of year.
The trouble, I think I have full faith in that their vision is a decent one, and that they know how and what kind of players would make this vision work. Question is making it happen in the salary cap era, Frank, with Oliver Ekman-Larsson's cap hit coming on and other things. Like, to me, that's the bigger problem here. I think they've got the right people in the right positions right now. The Canucks do, but how do you make it all work is another question. How do you get space with guys like Ilya Mikheyev taking up $5 million on your cap right now?
I know. And you know what? Like, one thing about Jim Rutherford is he's not afraid to be bold. Like we saw that last summer. He's willing to be bold. He's willing to change the configuration of things. But I don't know. Like, it's going to have to be a mixture of bold and creative this year in order to make it work with the players that you think you want to keep. Like Myers, Cole, Zadorov, those guys were very important to the success of that back end this year. And yes, Myers is going to take a pay cut. How much of a pay cut, that remains to be seen. Like Zadorov, it sounds like he wants every last penny. Is every last penny available to him in Vancouver? And Ian Cole doesn't make a ton of money, but still like a very serviceable guy. And I know had his struggles against Edmonton, but his impact was mostly good all season long. And more importantly, they fit what Tocchet is looking for on the back end, the bigger, lengthier player, physical guy. And then, like, I don't know if they accounted for Dakota Joshua having the kind of season he was going to have, because if anyone got himself more of a substantial raise, it would be Dakota Joshua. It's a guy who makes under $1 million currently. And I almost wonder with him, I don't think a team is going to go crazy on the AAV with him, but maybe there's a team out there willing to say, we'll give you an extra year. We'll give you a couple extra years because, we value what you do as long as you can continue doing it. Who are guys like that? Like Nick Paul got that really long deal in Tampa. Like there's that type of player where the AAV is not going to blow you away, but their kind of negotiating thing was, all right, tack on another year. Let's throw some guaranteed money on there. So
love
it'll be
Dakota
interesting
Joshua.
to see how they can do it.
He is 28.
Yeah.
And he's been in the league for all of 4 years. Like, this is a late bloomer, great player. But I think people have to get a little bit rooted in what to pay this player, given he's not even a half point per game player. And he's 28. Like, I don't know.
Could Podkolzin be that type of player next year if he could finish a little more? Like,
you got to take some
heavier
risks.
guy, physical, maybe takes another step. Like, because you almost, the way things end this year doesn't necessarily mean that's the way things are going to start next year. You almost have like a progression in mind for guys. And so I see a guy like that, like he's a beefier kind of player. He's very willing to go throw the body around. If he could find some offense, it's like there's your cheaper internal replacement for a guy like that. But it's hard to bank on that happening. And that, I think that's why teams get lost in, this guy did it. We know he did it. We saw him do it. So let's pay him the money.
Does Kyle Dubas take Ilya Mikheyev at $3.5 million if the Canucks retain $1.5 million? Like, if the Canucks buy him out, they're on the hook for him for 4 more years at around $1.5 million, one spike to $2.5 million. That's too much. You can't do that. I don't think you can buy out Mikheyev. Does somebody take Mikheyev for 2 years at 3.5 if the Canucks retain?
Okay, so the only way a team, I think, is going to take Mikheyev off your hands is if a team is really slow and they just need some players to skate fast out there. Because I don't like, he's been in the league too long now, and he's shot too many pucks into pads and into chest protectors to think that he's finally going to, break through offensively. So if your team is slow, AKA, I don't think the Pittsburgh Penguins are a very fast team. I don't think the Islanders are a fast team, although they got, their own issues. Like, that's what I would be looking at. Who just needs fast players to skate up and down the wing and push the pace a little bit? The other thing, with Kyle in Pittsburgh, and do you think, like, at some point, does he want to get away from bringing in ex players and try other guys? He brought in Bunting. Bunting worked well. Do you want to bring in Mikheyev just because you had him in Toronto?
It's the hockey way. It's the hockey way. It's just the way.
I know, but he did it so much here with the Sault Ste. Marie guys in Toronto. It's like everyone had a connection to Sault Ste. Marie. Like, I just wonder, at some point, do you say, all right, I'm not, we're not going to do that anymore, or we're only going to do it when we really, really believe in that player. But I don't know. It's hard. Like, it's as you saw last year. If you think you have a guy who is making too much and not contributing enough, it's hard to get rid of that player and alleviate that cap space. But I think in Vancouver's case, it really worked out for them well, because it was Garland who stuck around, it was Besser who stuck around, and both those guys had monster seasons. I don't see Mikheyev like having that, that breakthrough offensively. I wouldn't put them in the category of those two guys. I would just say, like, he's a guy who can skate really, really fast, and he's probably not going to be a finisher at any point.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it pivots on whether you have success with old players, right? Like,
yeah, you go back to the well.
McCrimmon's having success with guys he knows from the Western Hockey League. Jim Rutherford is having success for the most part with old Penguins that he's brought here. I'm not sure Dubas has had much success with old Greyhounds or now ex-Leafs, but we shall see. Frank, if I told you Philip Hronek was battling through an injury in the second half of the season, how much would that change the equation? How much would that change the outlook on the second half and playoffs that he had, and including the case to bring him back on a longer-term deal?
Well, it would certainly change things. If I was negotiating that contract, I would say, sorry, like the numbers are the numbers, and it's pretty concrete. So, if you thought you were an $8 million player, and we're taking a look at what the numbers should be, I can't just use the fact that, okay, you were banged up and you were playing, so we're still going to pay you at it is a little cutthroat when it comes to that type of stuff. I think Philip Hronek was outstanding for Vancouver, like for a large portion of the season. And even when he wasn't getting points, and things dried up, I still think he was playing really, really well. Now, does that make him an $8 million player? I still can't buy into him being an $8 million guy. I just can't. I know, like, as a player, you want to push for it. All that stuff is great. But I wonder now too, if you're rebuilding this blue line, because it is a little bit of a rebuilding blue line, because you have 3 UFAs and you have Hronek, who's an RFA, who's ARB eligible. Like, what are your priorities here? Is your priority Hronek, who's going to play with Hughes, and they had a lot of success together? Or is it going to be, allocating some money to keep or bring in guys who are massive and tree trunks, and it's something you really, really wanted? Like, if you could have one or the other, are you spreading it out to a few bigger guys like Zadorov, Myers, Cole? I know the money's not equal. Or are you just kind of put the $8 million towards Hronek? I kind of think, if you're giving me the option, I think the value is more in having a couple guys similar to how you had Myers, Zadorov, and Cole, that are big, that made it hard for Connor McDavid, that made it hard for the Nashville Predators. That, like, I think there's a lot of value in that, especially if you think your team is going to be in the playoffs again next season and the season after that. Like, now that's where the conversation goes. Who's helping us more in the playoffs? Every team around the league is looking for those big monster guys come trade deadline time. If you can have them in your group already, I think it helps, save some of the heavy lifting and get that done earlier.
Or do you save that money in your wallet for guys like Pesce or Montour if they happen to hit the free agency market? Does it start to take a big chunk out of those salaries if you save the H schmil that you're going to give Hronek?
Well, Montour is an interesting one because, like, he would be getting $8 million for sure. I would have to imagine he's $8 million plus. And then Pesce's probably he's not in that category, but he's a really solid, well-rounded guy. Like he'd be perfect to play with a guy like Quinn Hughes. He'd be perfect to play with a lot of, left-handed number one guys around the league. Like there are going to be options for you. So I do think that's why maybe, you put your focus on the guys that really fit the identity of what you want, and see what you can fill as far as like a puck moving type who can play with Quinn Hughes. I don't know. It's obviously more complex, and these are, long meetings that they're going to have, and there's going to be a lot of back and forth and a lot of debate. Like these are not one-sided, and you can make the case in a number of different ways for these guys. But, just going back to Matt's point about the injury, yes, the injury is, it's there, it's valid. But ultimately, if you're out there and you're playing, like that's what you're judged on. You're judged on how you play, and he's been injured a lot in the past. So
and it wasn't merely a down tick; it was an outage. Like it was outage for him. It didn't just go down.
Yeah, Frankie, great stuff. We appreciate you joining us each and every week, and look forward to several more weeks here of talking about the Canucks postmortem and the Stanley Cup playoffs. Just lastly here, West and Eastern finals are set here. Who do you like out of the Final Four?
Ooh, okay. I think I like the Dallas Stars, and I think I like the Florida Panthers. I think for the Rangers, we really haven't had to see them defend yet. Wasn't much of a challenge against Washington. Carolina, offensively challenged team. I think this will be the first real test for how well the Rangers defend. And, I think with the Oilers, it's the same old story. How's Stuart Skinner going to match up against Jake Ottinger? And can they win some matchups lower in the lineup? Which, if you take a look at Dallas's roster, even without Rope Hintz, it's pretty deep, pretty well balanced, pretty spread out. So Dallas, Florida, no state tax. Don't come at me with your financial pie charts. No state tax teams have a significant advantage. Do not at me.
In a season like this, you never want to miss a single second of what's happening on the ice, and you want to be around your fellow fans, right? Well, Greta Bar YVR at 50 West Cordova, the perfect spot to do so. Hey, if you've got tickets, a great place to pre and post. They've got drink specials every single day. And if you don't have tickets, well, stick around and soak up the atmosphere with all your fellow fans, play all the great video games and air hockey, great air hockey set up as well at Greta Bar YVR. We'll see you there, 50 West Cordova.
We've all heard of the overdose crisis, also known as the toxic drug crisis.
But did you know that it affects men disproportionately?
Last year, 78% of people dying here in BC were men, and the majority were 30 to 59 years old.
It's not easy to struggle with addiction, and the stigma around it can make it harder for people to reach out for help.
There is help and support. Every journey is different, and the thing that helps one person, it might not be the same for everyone.
So when someone does reach out, be compassionate and have open, non-judgmental conversations.
We here at Sekeres Price want to be part of the solution.
If you or someone you care about is struggling, you can find supports and services near you at helpstartshere.gov.bc.ca. And you can also watch powerful real-life stories of recovery on Help Starts Here website.
Our next guest brought to you by the Arnold Palmer designed Whistler Golf Club, now open for the 2024 season and playing to rave early season reviews. Tee times for any time during 2024 can be booked online now, and you have a group of 12 or more, you, the organizer, plays for free. Tell us more about your group, and to book online, visit whistlergolf.com. Well, it's golf season now in the Lower Mainland, and it's golf season in Southern Ontario. Has been for a couple of weeks, where John Shannon joins us from the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada and the co-host of the Bob McCown podcast. How we doing, John?
Doing great, and you're right. It is golf season, getting ready for the RBC Canadian Open next week. Not too far from my home in Hamilton.
And you guys have Taylor Pendrith on, do you?
Taylor Pendrith today, yeah. Just he took the week off, and pretty good talker for a golfer. Golfers aren't the greatest talkers at times, but he was really good.
Mm-hmm. And of course, the last 2 years at the RBC Canadian Open, there have been absolute bombshells dropped in the ongoing Live PGA Tour feud. So we'll see if it goes off
Something about being on neutral territory.
Yeah,
it's just.
Or whether or not we hear more from both sides in that great divide. John, let's get to the Canucks and Oilers here. Just your overall thoughts, general thoughts on how the series went to bed.
Well, I think it unfolded as most people thought it would. It was going to be a long series. It was going to be a 7-game series, and it was going to be close. What the Canucks did to me was pretty impressive. I don't think there's a more emotionally charged hockey club in the National Hockey League right now. When they get on a roll, they get on a roll. And all they need is one simple little break. And Ryan McLeod gave them that break in the third period in Game 7, and they almost took advantage of it. It puts everybody in good stead. I know that people in British Columbia are disappointed that the Canucks aren't advancing. But I'll tell you what, if you're going to get eliminated this way, because it wasn't for the lack of trying.
Yeah. We're asking on our poll question today, was a rivalry born? We had talked, John, that really only 2 playoff series between these clubs. You got to go way, way back to find the most recent one. And every time the Oilers have been good, the Canucks have been bad, and vice versa. So maybe for the first time, asking you, rivalry born here?
I'm not sure yet. If they only meet in the playoffs once every 3 or 4 years, then the answer is probably no. This was a Canuck team that dominated the regular season between these 2 clubs, and for the Oilers to come back and win the series, that was something I think even with Connor mentioning it in his post-game interview that. It wasn't too long ago that they were here losing 8-1, and that was the conversation. I'm going to put the rivalry on hold for now. I think there are going to be bigger rivals. I think Calgary is still a bigger rival with all the times they've played in the playoffs, and believe it or not, I still think Boston's a bigger rival based on ancient history of 14 years ago. So we all want the rivalry. We all want the divisional set up to work. Edmonton, Vancouver would be a great rivalry if they can continue it, but there's no guarantee of that. So I'm on hold when it comes to this being a good rivalry.
And there's no doubt about it. You hit the nail in terms of who, if we asked that question on March 15th, who people would have said is the biggest rivalry. And really at that point, I don't know that people would have said there was any burning rivalry, but if you had to, it probably would have been Calgary.
Right.
One more meeting would probably seal it. And with the current playoff format, you could see it as long as the Canucks can figure out a way to be okay next year again. And there are an awful lot of questions. So built into the poll question is really another little question of, do you think the Canucks are going to be available in the playoffs to face the Oilers next season?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing for me that, and Rick Tocchet did mention this after the game, is that there's pride back in this jersey, pride back in the logo. I think that the foundation that Alvin and Rutherford and Tocchet have built is there for the long haul in so many ways. The fascination for me is, and I think that this is something that other Canadian cities, particularly the one I'm living in, marvel at, is that they were able to do it so quickly. You know, the two of you were just as skeptical as anybody else when Rutherford showed up, and you know they went through the Boudreau era, and they weren't supposed to do this year at all.
No,
they were going to be on the cusp of making the playoffs, and I think that what this group has done and what the players have done is reinstill this team being a playoff contender every year.
Now, Jim Rutherford leaned into some of his reputational tropes, if you will, acting early, making a splash at the trade deadline, or thereabouts, not on the deadline day per se, but thereabouts. The other one that people are saying now going into this offseason is they'll make a splash. They'll be busy. They're going to zig when you think they're going to zag. They can't stand pat. There's too many changes, too many UFAs and RFAs for standing pat to be an option. So should Canucks fans buckle up for the summer, do you think?
Well, I think the two questions when you talk that way, Blake, is what's going to happen with Elias Lindholm? What's going to happen with Nikita Zadorov? I mean, those are the two.
But those are attached, John, to other questions, and where you get that room are those questions attached to Ilya Mikheyev's future and a couple of other guys that may need to be traded or bought out.
No, that's fair, but in the end, when I'm talking about going to camp in September, Zadorov has to be on this team in September. He has to be on this team. Of any of the free agents or the UFAs or even the RFAs that played in the playoffs, he made the biggest impression. I did not think he was as good as he played in this playoff series or the whole playoffs. And you're going, wow, this guy is a stud. They have to find a way to get him signed. And I do think, the challenge of the RFA and Tronik being signed as well. Now, they have him for one more year at least if they want. But those two guys become such cornerstones to the future of this hockey club that those are the two that I'm watching more than anything else.
Young Shelovs, do you suspect he will be the backup goaltender next year and that the Canucks will go forward with him and Demko?
Casey DeSmith found an inopportune time to be hurt. That's unfortunate. He for the regular season, he did yeoman's work, did better than everybody expected. Within the Nashville series, nobody thought he would get hurt. He got hurt. And he got Wally pipped, Matt. He got Wally pipped. And, you couldn't help but love what Shelovs did on so many different levels. And he's going to be affordable. And so, this is Demko Shelovs now for the next few seasons.
Mm-hmm. Mikheyev, John, there's some buyout talk, a word or two about what you saw from him in the playoffs and where you think the future goes for that player with the Canucks.
Fisher cut bait, I guess. I think that's what everybody's talking about. You have to marvel still at his speed, but where the hands have gone is another story. Where they have gone. Now, were they great to begin with? No, they weren't great to begin with. There still will be somebody out there, I suspect, that thinks that Mikheyev has some value And so before you even worry about thinking about the buyout window, is there a chance that you can move him, even if you have to take some of the salary? When he was not in the lineup, they didn't miss him. When he was in the lineup, he missed the net. And so that's what Rutherford and Allvin will have to decide is whether the sample size of him being so inept offensively is something that they can move on from and try to find a way to save some of the money.
Suspect that as we're recording this, it has not been announced yet, but suspect that Rick Tocchet will win the Jack Adams Award as the league's top choice. We're wondering whether it's going to be unanimous as the league's top coach. We're wondering whether he'll be the unanimous choice for the award, John. And,
there's always one broadcaster that'll screw it up. You know that.
Damn broadcasters.
He talked after the game about the connectivity of the organization and that they finally have that this year. And it's true. They didn't have that even last year with Bruce. What do you think is possible now that the Canucks are finally a connected organization, ownership, management, coaching staff, players?
It's amazing what happens when everybody's pulling in the same direction, isn't it? It really is. For Rutherford to have the ultimate control, for him to give some of that to Allvin, and for Rick Tocchet's no-nonsense approach to be effective, I think speaks volumes of what this organization can be. I think this will be, in the next 4 or 5 years, a perennial 100-point team. And then the question becomes, are they going to be healthy enough? And unfortunately, that's the question. Are they going to be healthy enough to make a dent in the playoffs? There's going to be lots of people as the summer goes on going to say, wow, how much different would this have been if Thatcher Demko had been in goal? Not a knock at Mikhailov. He did great work. But Thatcher Demko might have stopped that Evan Bouchard overtime goal. There were some opportunities that the Oilers had because of Shilov's inexperience. The CC goal. I mean, does Demko stop that? So to me, this is all about making sure that players that are star players for this team stay healthy. And Thatcher Demko is at the top of that list. There's
not a bounty of free agents. I mean, it's there, but it's not like everybody gets to go to town with the cap going up, as significant as it has in the last half decade. Does it get silly in free agency, do you think? And does that hamper the ability of the Vancouver Canucks to back up last season to this?
I don't know if it gets silly because a lot of people have already spent that money.
Yeah.
The Canucks have spent that money already on the Pettersson deal. Yeah. What's going to happen here with the Nylander deal has spent that money here as well. You wonder, with everything that's going on, is this the summer of trades rather than free agency? Is this the summer where there are people jockeying their money in order to try to keep certain people in their organization happy? I mean, I for the life of me, other than Barry Trotz being a nice guy, I still don't understand the McDonough trade to back to Tampa financially for the Lightning. They have guys to sign. They need to sign some guys. And Ryan McDonough is almost $7 million on the cap for them without Nashville taking any dollars back. So I think that we're probably going to see, rather than free agency being a difference, and perhaps free agency is part of it, I think we're going to see more trades as people try to make sure that they have cash to be used. And obviously guys like Mitch Marner would be at the top of that list.
Yeah, we've wondered about busy off seasons, lots of trades in the past, but it has been the stuck salary cap that hasn't been able to really see that come to fruition. I mean, it just looks flatly like the Lightning are now going to walk away from Stamkos, John.
I don't think so. I still think that they're going to try to find a way to make it work. It doesn't make any sense. It's just, Stamkos still wants to be there. I still think he has value to that hockey club. I'm old-fashioned, Matt. I do think you pay for loyalty, and I think that there's been loyalty both ways, and I think Julien Brisebois is smart enough to know that, and I think that Steven Stamkos and his people at Newport Sports are smart enough to know that too.
Yeah. If you're thinking trades this summer, does that include UC Saros and Jacob Markstrom, the two big goaltenders who were either on the market or rumored to be on the market this year?
Yes. Saros for sure, because they have Iskarov in Milwaukee that's supposed to, when you can have a controllable dollar figure for an entry-level guy for 3 years, that makes life a little more tangible. And Saros going into the last year of his deal, I think that that's something you have to consider. The Markstrom one's an interesting one for me. And if I'm Craig Conroy, I'm having my meetings with my scouts and with my coaching staff saying, is Dustin Wolf good enough? And if they believe that Dustin Wolf is good enough, then the answer is yes. If they think he's not there yet, then the answer is no, because you still need you need a goaltender. You need somebody to stop the puck. And Dustin Wolf, to me, has not really proven that he's an NHL goalie just yet. Lots of potential, but it's taken a lot longer for Wolf to get to the NHL level, particularly with his size as a factor. So to me, the Markstrom deal really is reliant on the fact that they think Dustin Wolf can play that position for Calgary.
While we're talking about former Canucks of that era, a lot of Canuck fans, I think, in their own minds, have just put Christopher Tanev on the roster for next season, except he's amongst the best defensemen in the NHL right now in these playoffs in terms of holding down the superstars. What do you pay Chris Tanev, oft injured, now 34 years old? He's going to be 35 before Christmas of next year. Can you afford to give him any raise on a $4.5 million contract for a 35-year-old defenseman? Should the Canucks pursue a right shot defenseman of Chris Tanev?
Well, if the Canucks do, just get in line.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's going to be at least 5 or 6 teams that decide that Chris Tanev is what they need. And somebody will be silly enough to give him not the 2 or 3 year deal, but the 4-year deal. So that's going to be the challenge. Who is anybody going to be in that silly summer signing season? Be prepared to give Tanev that kind of term. I think the money's probably where it was and where it always is. To me, the thing with Tanev is, what will the term be? Brad Treliving, has a relationship with Chris as well. The Maple Leafs are in need of somebody. And the other aspect is that Dallas is a pretty good place to play too, and no state tax. So
right.
There's that huge advantage of the difference between 37% and 51 or 52%. That teams like Dallas and Nashville and Tampa and Florida and Seattle and Utah, I guess, they can actually put into play. So it's going to be a tough road to hoe for any team in Canada to try to compete with those teams from a salary base. So to me, I'd be shocked if Chris Tanev ends up anywhere other than Dallas or Toronto.
And of course, 2 of the Final 4 are non-state income tax jurisdictions. Have we had this conversation before, Shannon, about the league and maybe having a look at this, because it's turning into quite a competitive advantage?
We probably have, and it usually comes up in the last week of June and the first week of July when these types of events occur. But then there are lots of people that would say, yeah, the advantage is such, but when you look at how many teams in the top 10 revenue generating teams are still in our country, they have more money to spend in many ways, even though there is a cap. So from that perspective, it's, there are opportunities around the cap that Canadian teams can pay, whether it be, facilities, which by the way, has become the biggest selling point that Edmonton has been able to use in the last little while in signing free agents.
Yeah.
They get treated like royalty. the practice facility, and we haven't heard much about the practice facility in Vancouver for a couple of months, the practice facility and the amenities in Rogers Place make it a sellable point to a player that looks at dollars and looks at access and looks at, security for his family and everything about it. It's the non-tangible stuff the team and the players are looking at, because in many ways the money ends up being rather equal anywhere you go.
It ends up being enough. Not equal.
Yeah, well, I mean, they have all the amenities, but they're still bringing Russian free agents to Joey's, for heaven's sakes, with Kuzmenko a couple of summers ago.
They didn't need to take Zach Hyman to Joey's. And by the way, Matthias Ekholm loves playing in Edmonton, so they've done a good job there in doing it.
No, they have. Of course, there was that one summer where every winger they signed was playing with McDavid, right? Lucic and
all promises, yeah.
Yeah. Lastly, John, Final Four here. Who do you like to emerge as the West and East champion?
I tell you, this is hard. I can see both series going 7. I can see Florida grinding it out. I just, when you look at what they do and how they play, and call it the Sam Bennett effect. The Sam Bennett's going to be a factor at some point. He's going to be the most hated man in New York City. And Edmonton, Dallas, to me, it's comparable to what we saw in the Vancouver series. They both have strengths. Tanev and Heiskanen are going to be all over McDavid and Draisaitl. The Oilers have the 2 best players, but the Dallas Stars are deeper.
Dallas is like a better version of the Canucks, so I do like the chances.
And they still have their number 1 goalie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, again, not a knock at Shilov's, but
no, it's true.
If Jake Ottinger's dialed in and they're going Jake Ottinger versus Stu Skinner, I don't know how you can't pick Dallas.
I'm with you, John, on Dallas. Marvelous stuff, my friend. Thank you for this. We will catch up next week.
Have a good week, boys.
Time now for the golf report. And as we round our way past the season's second major, truly a PGA championship that won't soon be forgotten. I'd say a star is born, but I think the bigger question with Xander Schauffele is a superstar born? And speaking of superstars, Scotty Scheffler somehow managed a good round Friday after spending the morning and stretching in a jail cell in Louisville, Kentucky. And the cops are not dropping the charges here. Huh?
Oh, no.
Well, at least not yet. There has been a court appearance. It has been delayed, so we'll see where this goes. The officer's body camera wasn't on, and the mayor said he understood why it wouldn't have been on originally, just doing traffic duty, but that it should have been on at some point during the arrest. Now, there is video courtesy of ESPN where reporter Jeff Darlington, commentator Bob Wischusen, and some support staff were in a car that Scheffler passed on his way to the golf course and into this encounter with the police officer. But needless to say, Scheffler, it was a little much for Scheffler on the Saturday. He fell back. Otherwise, Blake, he would have been up there with what was a sensational leaderboard and a major golf tournament that gave us something that we have been baying for some time now, and that is a dramatic 72nd hole finish.
Those U.S. cops are all about procedure until it's their own procedure, and then there's all sorts of reasons for it. Yeah, but the finish was great. I know there's a lot of consternation about the low number put up by Xander Schauffele, but you can't have it both ways. You can't complain that there's not dramatic finishes and big names and then say, oh, but the number is too low. Who gives a flying F if the number is too low? You want a competitive, dramatic finish with all the big guns at the top of the leaderboard, and that's who was there. So I'm not too concerned. Do I want that every major? No. Do I want it every PGA championship? No. But as a one-time thing, there's no repeating pattern here just yet. So just enjoy it.
And a lot of it was forced by the rains there,
right?
In Louisville.
Mother Nature is going to play a role.
Made the course soft, and these guys are just really freaking good. So when they know the ball is going to hold on the green and they're hitting to a number, yeah, the top of the world can do that. Like, these guys are that good, that specific with their yardages. The record set here, minus 21, the winning scorer for Xander Schauffele. He shot 62, which is a tie for the low round at a major. In fact, Xander Schauffele now has 2 of the 4 62s shot in major championship golf. The lowest combined score to par by the field in PGA championship history. The field went minus 214 at Valhalla. That was miles better than the previous lowest, which was plus 40 at Riviera 95 and plus 59 at Bellerive outside of St. Louis in 2018. And I don't know about you, but I was kind of looking forward to a playoff, if for nothing else than the scene of big, burly Bryson DeChambeau sitting on the tee awaiting little Xander Schauffele, who rides up in a golf cart. That would have been quite a juxtaposition, and goes to show, right? All shapes and sizes golfers. But it was a tremendous leaderboard. It was a tremendous tournament. It had back nine and 72nd hole drama. So
I'm glad Schauffele won for 2 reasons. Schauffele would have had a hell of a fortnight if he loses that tournament after losing the Wells Fargo the week before, after having a multi-shot lead for the entirety of the tournament, only to see Rory McIlroy zoom past him. So if he had done that twice in a row, boy, you would have just thought he was snake bitten and never to win a game again. But also, now he's not an also-ran. Now he isn't the best golfer without a major. And
he's a formidable challenger to Scheffler, who is number one by a margin. No one would argue that.
But Schauffele gets it at the age of 32, so he's got some runway. You know, he didn't wait till he was 36 like some to finally break through. He gets it at 30. Now he's got a legit decade to try to wreak some havoc.
Yeah, and he's one of a number of guys who are going to rival and challenge Scheffler going forward. So should be a fantastic U.S. Open at Pinehurst and an Open Championship at Royal Troon. Looking forward to that. And here's the other reason I found myself pulling for Schauffele on the weekend. He might just be the most consistent golfer in the world, or at least this side of Nelly Corda. He is a put it in the fairway, put it on the green, make your share of putts, scramble when you have to guy. There is really not a lot of weakness in his game. He travels with one of these huge teams, Blake. He's got like a full entourage and posse that comes with him, like no stone unturned. And he is currently the leader when it comes to consecutive cuts made on the PGA Tour. Blake, he's made 47 consecutive cuts. Talking about consistency. The PGA Tour average is 4. He's at 47, or nearly 12 times that. He has been extraordinary in terms of his consistency, and applaud him for it. And he was most deserving of his first major title. That's the Golf Report, brought to you by the Arnold Palmer Design Whistler Golf Club, now open for the 2024 season, playing a rave early season reviews. Tee times for any time during the 24 season can be booked online right now. And if you have a group of 12 or more, you, the organizer, plays for free. For more information or to book online, visit whistlergolf.com. Hey, everybody, if you're enjoying what you're seeing here, then follow along with Sekeres Price on YouTube. I promise more content coming.
The kids call it subscribe on YouTube.
Well, how about liking it?
Do that as well. Smash it right now.